Hello and welcome. Today, we're diving into the thrilling, darkly comedic, and horrifying world of Triggered, a 2020 film that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Fair warning, spoilers ahead, so proceed with caution. The story follows 9 former high school friends who reunite for what seems like a fun camping trip in the woods, only to find themselves caught in a twisted game orchestrated by a vengeful science teacher. As the night unfolds, buried secrets surface, and the friends realize that survival comes at a grim cost. They must turn on each other, knowing only one of them will leave the woods alive. Around a crackling bonfire in the heart of the woods, 9 old friends sit reminiscing, their laughter echoing through the night. It's been years since they've all been together, and despite disagreements about the wisdom of camping in the forest instead of crashing at a cheap motel 30 miles away, there's a shared joy in their reunion. Rhian, the brainy valedictorian of their class, is still with her high school sweetheart PJ, a free-spirited rock drummer. Meanwhile, the once popular Ezra is also still paired with his girlfriend Cece, though their relationship seems far shakier. The firelight dances on their faces, masking the secrets and tensions simmering beneath their cheerful facade. Shay and Bobby, still inseparable, sit close by while Amber and the enigmatic, brooding Cato share quiet whispers. Then there's Aaron, the shy wallflower of the group, observing everything from the sidelines. Amid the cheerful chatter, Cece stands out, her mood tense and her movements restless. Excusing herself with a lie, she retreats to her tent to drink alone, leaving the others puzzled. As the group speculates about her behavior, Cato recalls her vengeful streak from their high school days. Concerned, Amber, Cece's best friend, follows her to the tent and gently pries for answers. Finally, Cece confesses her suspicion that Ezra, her longtime boyfriend, might be cheating on her, a revelation that casts a shadow over the night. Erin sits quietly, her mind heavy with memories that dampen the joy of reunion. Being back with the group dredges up the pain of her high school years, particularly the tragedy of her boyfriend Caleb, who had a heart condition. She remembers the night at one of Ezra's wild parties when Caleb took too much speed and overdosed, a haunting moment she can't shake. Adding to her unease is Cato, her ex, who still harbors feelings for her and seems unwilling to understand the depth of her grief. As the others begin settling in for the night, Erin's restlessness deepens when she catches sight of a shadowy figure moving among the trees, sending a chill down her spine. Panic grips Erin as she tries to escape the mysterious figure, but he's too fast. Before she can scream, he catches up and knocks her unconscious. When the 9 friends awaken, confusion and fear settle in. They're all wearing strange vests, the cars are gone, and so is Bobby. A sickening realization dawns as they piece together that they've been drugged to stay asleep. Suddenly, a hooded figure steps out of the woods, a gun in hand. The group's terror deepens when they recognize him, Mr. Peterson, their former high school science teacher and Caleb's grieving father. His voice is calm but chilling as he promises them one final, deadly lesson. Desperation takes hold as Rhian frantically tries to remove the vest from PJ, but Mr. Peterson's voice cuts through the chaos, cold and matter-of-fact. He assures them that the vests are industrial grade and impossible to remove. Though he offers no clear explanation for why he's targeted these former students, his seething anger reveals enough. After losing his son to an overdose and his wife to despair, he's out for vengeance against those he blames for his shattered life. With a sinister calm, he presses a button and small screens on the vests flicker to life. His declaration freezes them all. Only one of them will leave the woods alive, and survival will depend on who keeps their timer running the longest. Without a word, Mr. Peterson raises the gun to his mouth and pulls the trigger, ending his life in an instant. The 8 friends are left frozen in horror, their shock rippling through the cold night air. But their terror quickly deepens when the screens on their vests begin to glow, revealing timers counting down. Each timer is different, and the vests emit colored lights indicating how much time remains. Shay's vest, glowing blue, shows the most time, while the others pulse green. Panic takes hold as Rhian's mind races. She becomes convinced that Bobby, the one who orchestrated their reunion, had been working with Mr. Peterson all along to bring them into this nightmare. Rian, ever the voice of reason, urges the group to think logically. Mr. Peterson must have driven to the woods, and finding his car could be their only chance to escape, call for help, and remove the vests. With tensions high, the group splits up to search, though Ezra lingers behind, discreetly snatching Mr. Peterson's empty gun before heading into the woods. Wandering through the darkness, Ezra stumbles upon Bobby, tied and chained to a tree, his vest ominously glowing red. The discovery ignites a heated argument when Aaron accuses Bobby of being Mr. Peterson's accomplice, while Shay, her voice trembling with urgency, insists they free him before it's too late. As the argument escalates, Bobby finally cracks, confessing through tears that Mr. Peterson had blackmailed him into luring his friends to the woods. Peterson had discovered Bobby's secret bisexuality and threatened to expose compromising photos unless he complied. Before Bobby can reveal more about the twisted rules of the deadly game, his timer hits 0. In an instant, his vest detonates, the explosion shattering the silence and sending the group into a frenzy. Consumed by panic, the remaining 8 scatter into the woods. Among them, PJ notices his vest glowing red, a horrifying sign that he now has the least time to survive. Desperation fuels his every step as the countdown ticks mercilessly closer to 0. Desperate and terrified, PJ screams Rian's name into the night, his voice raw with panic. When she finally finds him, he falls to his knees, begging her for help, knowing she's the smartest of the group. But with only 3 minutes left on his timer, fear clouds his thoughts. In a frantic attempt to shield Rian from the inevitable explosion, he stumbles backward, unaware of Shay approaching from behind. His flashlight swings wildly, striking her by accident. Shay crumbles to the ground, blood pooling from a gash on her head, and Rian and PJ freeze in horror. Moments later, Shay takes her final breath, her vest screen fading to black. PJ's timer suddenly jumps, the remaining time from Shay's vest now transferred to his, a cruel twist that leaves them both shaken to the core. Now, PJ finds himself with the largest amount of time, his vest glowing blue, but the weight of what he's just done unintentional as it was haunts him. Rian, ever the pragmatist, pulls him from his shock, reminding him that they need to regroup with the others. When they finally meet up and explain what happened, the grim reality sinks in. They're trapped in a twisted game where survival means taking time from one another by any means necessary. The vest closest to the victim gains their remaining time, and a cold silence falls over the group as they realize the horror of their situation. With their lives hanging in the balance, each of them begins to contemplate the brutal choices they might have to make in order to stay alive. Rian holds on to the hope that there's still a way for all of them to survive, believing that with some outside help, they could make it through this nightmare. But Kato, already overwhelmed by the desperation of the situation, is growing increasingly aggressive, convinced that everyone will eventually turn on each other. Aaron, ever the pragmatist, suggests they split up, thinking it will reduce the temptation to betray one another. As they argue, a chilling realization dawns their one friend short. Cece, her vest flashing red with the least amount of time, is silently preparing herself. With a cold, determined look in her eyes, she charges at Ezra, knowing that of all the group, she'd have the least remorse about ending his life to buy herself more time. Cece, consumed by betrayal over Ezra's infidelity, sees him as the one to take out, but when she charges, her aim falters and her shot misses. In the chaos, the group scatters once again. Ezra, realizing he's alone, finds Aaron deep in the woods and offers her a desperate proposition. They're both without partners, and he needs an ally. He suggests they find the road and head back to civilization, hoping to escape this deadly game together. Meanwhile, back at the tents, Rian searches through her gear, determined to find the spare cell phone she always brings on camping trips, while PJ, ever resourceful, uncovers a pocket knife that could prove vital in the days to come. As they crouch in the shadows, Rian and PJ watch Cece's red light draw nearer, her movements wild and frantic as she stumbles through the forest, desperately searching for anything to extend her life. In a stroke of luck, she finds a kitchen knife, her hands shaking as she grips it. Meanwhile, PJ, still rummaging for the cell phone, accidentally makes noise when the broken zipper on his bag catches. Cece whips around, but her attention shifts when she hears the sounds of another couple somewhere in the woods. Seizing the moment, PJ finally finds the phone, only to discover it has no service. With no other choice, he and Rian decide their best chance for survival is to leave the woods and make their way to an area with cell service, hoping to call for help before it's too late. Rian clings to hope, knowing her father, a police officer, might be their best shot at getting help. Meanwhile, Cece, hiding in the woods, waits for the perfect moment to strike as Kato and Amber walk by. Torn between her desire for revenge and her unwillingness to kill her best friend, she opts to stab Kato in the thigh, pinning him down. But Kato, desperate to survive, reveals Amber's dark secret that she was the one Ezra cheated on Cece with. Furious, Cece shifts her focus to Amber, preparing to end her life. Just as the final blow is about to land, Amber gasps out a shocking confession. She's pregnant. Cece, consumed by rage and disbelief, scoffs at Amber's confession and drives the knife deep into her abdomen. Despite the severe wound, Amber musters enough strength to pull the kitchen knife from her side and, in a final act of defiance, slashes Cece's throat open. As Cece crumples to the ground, Amber takes her blue vest, and Aaron now wears the red one, marking her as the next target. The group, now fully aware that someone has died, is left in eerie silence, with no explosion echoing through the woods, signaling that the brutal game of murder has begun. Staring at the carnage she's just wrought, Amber turns to Kato and, with chilling clarity, admits, "We're the only ones who've truly accepted it. We have to kill to win." Amber and Kato, having fully embraced the grim reality of their situation, hatch a deadly new plan. They will eliminate everyone, take their time, and then figure out a way to escape together, alive. Meanwhile, Rian, desperate for help, finally gets a signal on her cell phone and repeatedly calls her father, but he doesn't pick up, a troubling sign, as she knows he would never ignore her call. Her instincts kick in, and she tracks his phone, only to discover he's shockingly close, just 400 yards away. As Aaron and Ezra race through the woods, they stumble upon a horrifying sight. Rian's father, bound to a tree, wearing a vest identical to theirs, marking him as another player in this deadly game. Rian and the others stand frozen in shock as Mr. Miller, drenched in blood and trembling, reveals the devastating truth. He explains that Mr. Peterson was seeking revenge on him as well, not just the group. It was Mr. Miller, the coroner, who ruled Caleb's death as natural, but Peterson had always suspected otherwise. The grief-stricken father dug deeper, conducting his own investigations and blood tests, ultimately uncovering a horrifying discovery. While Caleb's heart condition had contributed to his death, along with the substance abuse, it was the 5 times the lethal dose of drugs in his system that sealed the truth. Someone had intentionally drugged Caleb that night. His death wasn't an accidental overdose, it was cold-blooded murder. As Rian and PJ desperately search for a signal in the woods, Kato suddenly appears, claiming to be injured and asking for help. Instinctively, the couple tries to flee, wary of his true intentions. PJ, believing Kato isn't a threat, attempts to reason with him, but his confidence falters when he sees Kato carrying an axe. Realizing he's been deceived, PJ's heart races as Kato calmly explains it's not PJ he hates, but the game itself. Despite PJ's desperate attempts to talk him down, the tension boils over, and a violent confrontation ensues. Kato swings the axe with brutal intent, but in the chaos, he misses, slamming the blade deep into the wood of a nearby tree instead of PJ. With the axe lodged firmly in the tree, Kato is forced to fight with his fists. Though his hands are battered and broken, PJ manages to defend himself, using his pocket knife to stab Kato in the foot before making a desperate run for it. As Rian rushes to help her boyfriend, Amber suddenly strikes from behind, delivering a vicious blow. Rian's punch to Amber's nose only seems to fuel her rage, but it gives Rian just enough time to escape. Meanwhile, Ezra and Aaron struggle to carry the badly wounded Mr. Miller back to camp, hoping to reach the first aid kit, but the blood loss is severe, and he's barely conscious, his injuries leaving him weak and close to death. With Mr. Miller slipping closer to death, Ezra has lost all hope of saving him. Instead, he focuses on loading the gun he'd taken from Mr. Peterson's body, his mind consumed by a cold resolve. Meanwhile, Aaron desperately tries to contact 911 using Mr. Miller's phone, hoping for a miracle before it dies completely. In her desperation, she presses him for any final information, and he weakly reveals what little he knows. Peterson had two remote controls, one to activate the vests and one to deactivate them, and the latter should still be on Peterson's body. But by this point, Ezra is certain Mr. Miller's time is up, and wanting to end his suffering and calm Aaron's volatile state, he pulls the trigger, making sure Aaron is the one closest when he does. Though Aaron now holds the most time, she is disgusted by Ezra's ruthless actions. But Ezra, with only a little time left in the game, hands her the gun and urges her to use it to survive. Before she can respond, he disappears into the woods, cryptically claiming he believes he knows who murdered Caleb. Left alone and reeling from the chaos, Aaron eventually reunites with PJ and Rian. Rian, still desperately tracking her father's phone, is clinging to the hope of finding him, but Aaron delivers the heartbreaking news her father won't make it, and she's just witnessed his death. Shaken to her core by the revelation of her father's death, Aaron struggles to process the loss, but the urgency of the game forces her to push her grief aside. With the new knowledge about the remote control that can deactivate the vests, time is running out, and the three friends decide to split up. As PJ and Rian head back to the camp, PJ, realizing their time is rapidly dwindling, decides to seize the moment and proposes to Rian, wanting to hold on to something precious before it's too late. Meanwhile, Ezra, convinced that Cato is responsible for Caleb's murder, begins shouting Cato's name through the woods, determined to confront him. When the two finally cross paths, Ezra doesn't hesitate to accuse Cato, demanding answers to his suspicions. Ezra accuses Cato, claiming he had the strongest motive to kill Caleb as hatred for him and jealousy over his relationship with Aaron. He reveals that on the night of the party, Cato had ordered drugs and begged Ezra not to report it to the police after Caleb's death. But Cato denies the accusations, turning the blame back on Ezra, accusing him of being just as vile, only wanting to kill him to steal his time. However, Ezra's intentions are not solely selfish. He seeks justice, wanting to understand why Caleb was murdered and uncover the true reason this deadly game was set in motion. Ezra, desperate to take Cato down, swings the axe, but only manages to create a deep gash across Cato's cheek. For a brief moment, it seems like Cato is surrendering, letting Ezra lower his guard. But in a shocking twist, Cato suddenly proclaims he never killed Caleb and, with swift brutality, slashes Ezra's throat open with a crowbar. As Ezra collapses, Cato is left with only a few seconds of victory, now wearing the triggered vest himself. Meanwhile, Aaron, frantically searching for Ezra, stumbles upon Amber in the woods, who appears to be injured. Amber plays the victim, luring Aaron closer before she viciously attacks, pinning Aaron down and stabbing her in the face with a knife. Aaron's screams echo through the woods, reaching PJ, who quickly abandons Rian to rush to her aid. As Aaron fights to escape Amber's grasp, the twisted woman plunges a knife into the back of Aaron's thigh. Just as things seem hopeless, PJ arrives and, grabbing the gun Ezra had given Aaron, points it at Amber, warning her not to move. He tells Aaron to run back to the camp with Rian, desperate to get her to safety. But PJ, who has always refused to play along with this deadly game, struggles to steady his hand, his reluctance to kill making it hard to aim at Amber. When Cato appears to help Amber, PJ tells them both to follow him to the camp, where they might have a chance to deactivate the vests with the remote control. Cato, unwilling to take any chances and desperate to survive with the least amount of time left, attacks PJ with the same axe he used to kill Ezra. PJ, overwhelmed and unable to defend himself, desperately shouts for Kato to stop, reminding him that they were like brothers. For a fleeting moment, Kato appears remorseful, but that is short-lived as he picks up the gun lying near his feet and shoots PJ in the head, killing him instantly. With one friend out of the way, and his timer now showing just over a quarter of an hour, Kato turns his attention to Amber, knowing it's time to deal with her next. Greedily and without remorse, Kato raises his axe and strikes Amber, claiming the first place with her death. Meanwhile, Rian, now desperately running towards the camp as the one with the red vest, is terrified. She searches through Mr. Peterson's body and finds the remote control. But when she presses it, all the vests light up red, and the timers are set to their lowest, signaling a catastrophic turn. Aaron arrives at the camp just in time and suggests pressing the button again, hoping to reverse the damage, but Rian, knowing the risks, warns that it's far too dangerous. Realizing that Peterson had accounted for every possible move, Rian and Aaron fear that pressing the button again could mean death for every remaining player. As they rush back into the woods to find PJ, they instead encounter Kato, who coldly informs them that both PJ and Ezra are dead and unapologetically admits to killing them. Enraged by the loss of her boyfriend, Rian attacks, plunging a pocket knife into Kato's bicep. The girls manage to escape into the woods, but a crushing realization dawns on Rian. Even if they kill Kato, it won't be enough to change the rules of the game or give them enough time to escape. In a moment of desperation, Rian realizes that one of them must die to survive, and she turns the gun to Aaron's head. Doubting that Aaron has told her the full truth about her father's death, Rian suspects it wasn't simply a matter of bleeding out. Aaron, terrified, swears on her life that it wasn't her who killed Mr. Miller, but Ezra, and she blames herself for everything, admitting that she was the one who introduced the group to Caleb. In a moment of breakdown, Rian confesses that she was the one who killed Caleb, revealing that both she and Caleb were on the verge of being valedictorians, and the pressure ultimately drove her to do it. Rian, desperate to secure the highest GPA for a scholarship, decided to drug Caleb just enough to ensure he would fail a drug test and get disqualified. However, she miscalculated the dosage and accidentally killed him, forcing her to have her father cover up the crime. In a moment of self-defiance, Rian acknowledges that Aaron deserves to survive more than she does, handing her the gun and giving her permission to kill her. But before Aaron can process this, Kato, who had been eavesdropping in the background, suddenly attacks, stabbing Rian in the eyeball with a knife and leaving Aaron to face yet another horror in the game. Kato, shouting in triumph, picks up his axe while Rian, her life fading, slides into Aaron's arms, giving her the remaining time she has left. Enraged by the turn of events, Kato realizes that Aaron is now winning the game, but he doesn't believe she has the guts to actually kill him. He taunts her, reminding her that she was always the quiet wallflower, the girl who never stood up for herself. As the seconds tick away, Aaron comes to a sudden realization she doesn't need to kill Kato after all. Aaron realizes she doesn't need to kill Kato, she just needs to outlast him. With steady aim, she shoots him in both knees, watching him crumble in agony as he screams in disbelief. Kato, shocked by his defeat after all the lives he's taken, contemplates ending it all before his timer runs out. But before he can act, the timer hits 0, and he explodes in a violent burst. Aaron's timer stops, and a chilling message appears. Congratulations, you are the winner of the game. Alone, with all her friends or enemies dead, Aaron screams for help, her victory hollow and the weight of survival settling in.